Hey, how's it going? Phreak here, and patch 9.17 is out for Teamfight Tactics, and I want to talk about it. For those who don't know me, I am a recently Diamond 1 TFT player. Not Challenger, there are better players, but at least I'm pretty decent, so hopefully my opinions matter. Let's get into it. New champion coming out, and otherwise buffs and nerfs to things that exist. So Pantheon is a new 5-drop. So now there's basically been one new every size unit now at this point, with the 4 hextech units coming out. They're 1 through 4. Here's Pantheon, who's a 5. This will lower your chances at finding Kale or Swain or Karthus or whatever. There's another 5-drop out there. Pantheon seems to be incredibly good. It continues the trend of 5-drops getting roughly twice as good when you get them from 1 to 2 stars. The fact that the damage doubles, the stun is up 50%, is really, really, really good as well. So Pantheon is an awesome unit to get to 2 stars. He is Guardian Dragon, meaning he has very high armor natively, 100 base armor plus 50 per nearby Guardian, and of course has 83% magic damage reduction via Dragon. Of course, it means you have to run Shyvana or run Aurelion Soul. But when you look at how much damage this thing does, 15, 30, 45%, okay, realistically 15 or 30%, it means that you very much would probably like to get Sorcerers, so Aurelion Soul is a really good option here. Play 2 of the Sorcerers, play another Guardian, hey, here you go. This also means that you can play like quasi-wild dragon and don't have to go shapeshifter because you don't have to run Shyvana. You can run Guardian with this guy instead. Maybe you actually don't run for wild and you're just like, I'm dragon guardians sorcerers, and like that's your comp, and you have like a really big front line, and you give a lot of time for Aurelion Soul to get results out. Pantheon's going to be almost invincible, so seems pretty good. We'll see how this kind of pans out over time, but cool to see like a new sort of chase legendary. In the way that like nobles are like waiting to find Kale and their comp came online, they would just smash everyone. It feels like Pantheon can kind of do good things in a noble metagame, getting enough mana to get a spell off, things like that. So, all right, we'll see how it goes, but should be really good. Next up, a couple of systems updates. So the first carousel now only has 2 drops. You don't get screwed over by picking up a 1-cost Nidalee in order to find a recurve bow or whatever. I think this is fine. So I enjoyed the ability to decide to take 1 less gold to find a better item. I thought that was an okay skill test. So I didn't mind there being 1-drops, but maybe this is like new player friendly or something. I'm not sure. I'm pretty ambivalent about this change, but whatever. Big update here. There was ghost armies now get trait bonuses, so you're no longer rewarded for getting a ghost army. You're no longer like, this guy got lucky. He had a ghost army. Okay, I guess he's not going to take any damage. It might feel bad to pull a ghost and not get to deal damage to your opponent and knock someone out. That can feel bad if you win a fight and someone doesn't take damage. But I will say that overall this is going to shorten game time slightly, because when you have, let's say, 5 players left, 3 of them are taking damage. Instead of that sort of 5th player having a really good chance at not taking damage. Yeah, they don't knock someone else down themselves, but I think it's pretty reasonable. I think this will probably end up being a good change for the game, but as with all things in game design, how players feel is more important. There might be a compromise where ghost armies get trait bonuses but do, let's say, 5% less damage, so you don't... Well, if you lost to it, you would have lost harder against a real player, so, like maybe that's actually the right design. I don't know, but it's a thought. Next up, the attack speed cap has been increased from 2.5 up to 5.0. I actually like this a lot because one of my favorite builds was actually like double Rageblade Vayne, because she liked all the stats. And what would happen very frequently is you'd hit ranger bonus, get double attack speed, get a bunch of attacks off, and then you'd be at 2.5 the rest of the round, and it kind of felt bad to have a Rage Blade. So I think this is actually really good. This is a direct buff to Rage Blade. It is a direct buff to Rangers because you would go from 0.7 attacks per second to like 1.1. Then you doubled the 2.2 via Ranger bonus. It wouldn't take very long to like get beyond that. Now again, unless you like had 3 recurve bows on a range, you wouldn't hit this natively. But again, it is a buff to specifically Rage Blade, and specifically I think Rage Blade Vayne should be fairly reasonable and a build I want to keep trying because Vayne's my favorite League of Legends champion, so I always want to make Vayne work. It's really what it comes down to. And because of that, range is one of my favorite comps. So that's going to be me a lot. Tooltips are getting a better update, which is awesome. They're going to be more clear. Numbers will scale with ability power. The ones that do will show up that way. So now when you have Sork bonus on a bunch of champions, you can see, oh, okay, well, I'm Sork with a Volibear frontline. Oh, I see Volibear's damage doesn't scale, but you look at Vayne, you're like, oh, I'm at like 21% max health damage. Okay, cool. Like, that's a very good thing for learnability of the game. And even just the satisfaction of looking at your tooltips and saying, that's a large number. I feel awesome. Look at how much damage my Cho'Gath does. So, good change for the game. We'll see more of these in the future, I'm sure. That's cool stuff. All right, this is very relevant. This is very, very, very relevant. Assassins reworked to add crit chance. Now, the DPS is the same, right? The crit damage going down versus the crit chance going up. Here's the math. And I want to point out, by the way, the math I'm doing here, this is the value of the trait bonus over baseline crit chance, right? So if I go from 25% at 1.5 to 20% to 2.75, it is 28% more DPS, just like adding 10 crit chance and 50 crit damage, or 75 crit damage. It's still 28% more DPS. And then, going from 3 to 6, specifically that update to add the other 3 assassins is another 39% more on top, okay? So, to reiterate, these are indeed mathematically equivalent. Just so you know, indeed the math is the same. Assassin 3 is a 28% DPS modifier to your assassins. For comparison, Gunslinger 2 is a 50% DPS modifier to your gunslingers. Ranger 2 is a 25 becoming 30% more DPS to your rangers. So now the burstiness can certainly matter. You can one-shot people and that can be relevant. But as a set bonus, this is not as good as Gunslinger. And it's after this patch, there's buffs to Rangers, this patch, stay tuned. It is also not as much DPS gained as Rangers. It also requires 3 units. Again, though, burst matters, so that can be okay. But FYI, going up to Ranger 6, to Assassin 6, again, is 40% more damage than Assassin 3, right? And it multiplies on itself. I could have done this math as over baseline and over baseline again. Could have, it didn't do it, but that's worth doing at some point in the future. Either way, there you go. There's the math and there's what it is. Do want to point out though, 2 things that matter. This is a small nerf to Rengar, who gained 25% flat crit chance after leaping. Meaning the only stat he wanted was more crit damage. That has now been shrunk, so Rengar is a weaker champion. But Infinity Edge is buffed. Infinity Edge was a bad item on Assassins because you didn't gain crit chance, and it already did the thing Infinity Edge did. You would often overkill. Now, Infinity Edge is a good item on Assassins, or at least it's close. I haven't done the math, to be fair. Much like Rengar or damage over baseline, I can do the math on whether or not Infinity Edge is simply as good on Assassins as it is on a basic champion, or it's better on Assassins. Because keep in mind, right, like this buff right here doubles your crit chance and more than doubles your crit damage modifier, because you would do 50% bonus damage on a crit, right? Instead of doing 100 damage, you do 150. Now, instead of doing 100 damage, you do 300. Or instead of doing 150, you do 300. So the damage is still scaling by more than the chance. So there's still a chance that Infinity Edge is still suboptimal on Assassins. I will look into that. I will get back to you. But this helps, but it doesn't necessarily make it true that IE is correct on assassins, but it does help. Next up, a 1-second nerf to Hextech. Now, I have usually found that a frontliner with a GA tended to be able to survive 8 seconds anyway, but this will get your backliners their damage on time. This will pretty much guarantee that Karthus' first ult comes off with his items on. Small nerf to Hextech, that's fine, I guess. Doesn't seem like a huge deal, but it exists. Okay, that's fine. I mean, it's certainly one of those chases. It was one of those, traits that was worth chasing. So slight nerf here, but obviously Hextech is still good. Next up, small nerfs to Nobles. They're losing 10 armor and MR, and they're losing 10 health on hit. Here is this right here. The durability, right? If you had 20, 40, or 60 base resists, 60 is very high end, but like, for example, Vayne has 20 armor and 20 magic resist. Garen and Kayle have 40 armor and 20 magic resist. If you, I don't know, had a Guardian Angel on Garen, you would have 60 armor and 20 magic resist. So these are generally going to be pretty accurate for numbers. Here's your old noble value, here's the new noble value with these numbers in line, and it's a 6 to 5% durability cut. So you take about 5 to 6% more damage, okay? And you heal, fairly substantially less. You heal 2/7 less, 29% roughly. Definitely meaningful. Obviously resists living longer means you can get more attacks out to heal more. The heals stack with resists as well, because 35 health with more resists means more than 35 health without resists, etc., etc. So definitely a pretty big hit here. Noble is getting hit quite hard. Like this is definitely enough to push people off 6 Noble. Now, if you are in an uncontested lobby, you should probably still look for 6 Noble. It's still very good. Draven and Jinx are still good backliners. You're set up to play Blade Masters or Gunslingers, no problem. They're still wonderful, but there you go. Definitely a needed nerf. Again, it's going to be really worth chasing down. Pantheon, cool stuff's happening. All right, next up, a buff to Rangers. Now, my understanding is Rangers were actually pretty popular in the high elo Korean meta. I've not really been following the high level ladder scene, so I really couldn't tell you what like the super optimal comps are. My understanding though is Rangers were fairly common, but we're seeing a 3 to 4% DPS increase to the Rangers in this patch. Cool. 30%. Now, personally, I still think about how Gunslingers and Blade Masters work, and I think that should still be how this kind of stuff happens, which is that about half the time you get X amount of benefit, right? And the amount of benefit scales linearly. I'm not saying that all traits need to be exactly worked the same, but Demon works this way, Gunslinger works this way, Blade Master works this way. I'd be okay if every 3 seconds, Rangers have a 45% chance at gaining, 60 or 90 or 120 or whatever percent attack speed. Like, to me, I actually like that more, because having a 25% proc rate, which is now 30 here, or even 70%, like, to me, that actually feels kind of bad. I actually would rather these traits all happen about half the time, and the amount of benefit scales. That's how Blade Master Gunslinger works. That's what I would like to see. It's kind of whatever, but I don't know. That's my personal opinion. It's kind of whatever, but hey, that's how I feel. Either way, small buff, which is cool to see. This continues to make... This is actually, I guess to be fair, this is Shiv ambivalent. But I want to point out, right, that like a 65% DPS increase for grabbing 4 of them is worse than, for example, the Gunslinger bonus, which is a 100% DPS increase for having 4 of them. You do have less like single target focus fire, which is maybe then completely relevant and valid, considering you have things like Demon buff on hit for Varus and Glacial buff on hit for Ashe and Silverbolt on hit for Vayne. Like, there's good reasons to hit one target and like make sure your on hits work on them. Kind of. That doesn't really hold water for Glacial and Demon, but whatever. It's arguably better to be a Gunslinger and be Glacial or Demon, to be honest, but YOLO. For the specific case of Vayne, I guess, they really want to hit the same target again. Either way, we're wasting a lot of time doing things that's not very useful. It's a small buff here to DPS to make ranges a bit better. Because the DPS is going up, they don't necessarily need to be carried by items quite as hard, but this is still very good with Shiv, obviously. Next up, buffs to a lot of shapeshifters. Nidalee transforms 15 mana earlier. Jace gets 5 armor and transforms in case he was on, like, say, Rapid Fire Cannon. Shyvana transformed 15 mana earlier, and Gnar transforms 25 mana earlier. Now, I guess people really haven't been chasing after Gnar. I've really liked Gnar myself. He's felt very powerful. To be fair, being a frontliner, you kind of needed him to be 2-star to be really good, but 100 mana is not that hard to get. As a tank, you get hit a lot, you tend to transform. These are very, very big buffs to shapeshifters. I think Jace is probably, other than Elise, like the least sought after champion in the game. It felt like to me. I don't know if we're really ever going to play 6 shapeshifters the comp, because you have to then find Swain, and your front line is kind of janky. But it is a lot of health if you can get it to happen. And anyway, I think Gnar is very good, and these are big buffs to shapeshifters, and so shapeshifter is definitely an even better comp now, right? Like, there's a lot of sort of these top-end comps that are getting better. 4 Rangers gets better. 4 Assassin maybe is better. I think, to be fair, like 2-star Akali does so much damage with her ability that just it critting at all probably kills whatever she's hitting. So there probably is some value in all this. Maybe Assassin's is slightly stronger. Rangers definitely is. Shapeshifters definitely is. Nobles got weaker. Dragon got stronger. Guardian got stronger. There's a lot of traits that are getting quite a lot better. Yordle's now getting stronger here as well. Their dodge chance going up to 35 to 60. Here is the math here. They get 8% more durable at Yordle 3 and 13% more durable at Yordle 6. Keep in mind that this nerf, I actually forget if this got nerfed or buffed recently. Because I forget if Yordles was 2550 or if they were 3560 a while ago and then got dropped back down. I think this trait got buffed recently and it's getting buffed again, or something like that. Either way, whatever. Regardless, 6 Yordles is still kind of weird. You pretty much have to go Sork with 6 Yordle. Which means you only have room for, like, okay, 1 Sorcerer at 7 and then 1 something at 8. I mean, maybe that's Jinx and Aurelion Soul or something, right? And, like, that's your comp. It makes your front line pretty weak because you kind of only have Gnar and Poppy for that, but I don't know. But, you know, it's cool. I actually really do like 6 Yordle comps. I think they're quite good. So, you know, just I like seeing underused traits buffed, right? There's a lot of buffs in this patch, a lot of things getting stronger. Definitely going to be worth looking at 6 Yordles, especially with, you know, Rangers getting better. You're going to be, you know, more auto-attack focused. Assassins are getting better. Or here's the thing. Assassins are not mathematically better, but people will play Assassins more. Now, what's funny is it makes Phantom Dancer even... I know we're going back to Assassins. It makes Phantom Dancer even better against Assassins. Now you block half of their auto attacks, right? So if you now have a Phantom Dancer, they literally only hit you half the time instead of hitting you 3/4 of the time, which is an overall DPS down for the Assassins. Now, of course, Rapid Fire Cannon, sure, it's going to be bought on the primary carry, but you're still going to dodge all of, like, I don't know, Evelyn's auto attacks, who you're not going to RFC, obviously. But hey, we're going to see a lot more Rapid Fire Cannons because we're going to see more Phantom Dancers, we're going to see more Yordles, and we're going to see more Assassins. So RFC is going up. Speaking of RFC, Graves is not as good with it anymore. He doesn't do the full spread that's going to be narrowed. So we won't quite one-shot full teams, but honestly, I feel like Graves is still pretty good. In specifically the RFC carry builds. I think this is kind of needed. I mean, I don't think Graves is actually meta defining. I don't think, anyway. I could be wrong. But, okay, this is probably good for, like, the health of the game. Minor buffs to Warwick. This is actually quite a lot. He's very durable. Here's Warwick health. This is actually quite high. I do want to point out Warwick only has 30 armor, so he does have less baseline durability than, say, Garen. Essentially, this puts him at almost equal because Garen is 1/13 tankier than Warwick based on his extra armor, and this is about 1/13 more health. So this puts it pretty close. Warwick, as a standalone unit, is about as durable as Garen. Then you have, you know, Brawler bonus on the one side, Knight bonus on the other. Compare those, whatever. But this puts Warwick at high end of 1-star units durability. This puts Warwick at very durable, even without Brawler bonus. So Warwick can further tank for wild Yordle Sorcerer or wild shapeshifter, dragon, all that stuff, it's in there. Pretty meaningful changes to Lysandra here. So her first spell is going to come out 10 mana later. This is 75. It's now 85. But instead of needing to get 200 mana for 2 spells, only needs 170 for 2 spells. The ability damage is up pretty substantially, health up pretty substantially. Here is Lysandra before and after, 11% more health, and about 18% more spell damage. Lysandra has been getting buffed and buffed and buffed and buffed. Elementals are very quickly becoming units that can actually stand on their own a fair bit. Lysandra is probably up to reasonable at this point. She can actually be a bit more of a DPS mage. 325 damage on 85 mana is not bad. That's not quite as good as Ahri. Ahri is 200. I think Ahri is 2, 4, 600. And the back half is true damage, but it doesn't stun. And you could argue that Lysandra is maybe better as Glacial. I don't know, but this gets Lysandra closer to like Ahri damage. Also, I would argue that Lysandra's AoE is better than Ahri's AoE. Because it does 1 hex around instead of the 2 hexes, the 3 hex line. It's a 7 hex circle. So Lysandra stuns 1 target, deals, at least at rank 1, practically the same damage as Ahri, but even at rank 2, it's not that far off. This seems doable. I think Lysandra is a pretty reasonable Morellonomicon user. Kennen's probably still better, don't get me wrong. But this is enough to make Lysandra like legitimately a decent unit. I don't think Lysandra is great. I'm not excited to be like, oh, I'm getting Lysandra and building around her. But like if I hit 2-star Lysandra, I'm probably putting her in. Like this isn't terrible. This is a cool change. Lucian shoots faster with attack speed. So basically, if you do give him recurve bows, now most people don't. Most people do like Luden's Echo or Hush or whatever, but nice to see that the second shot scales attack speed, so that's a good thing. Gangplank getting a very big nerf here. Here's the ability damage down by about a quarter. Gangplank had become a lot of people's carry recently, with more good Gunslingers and a little bit more Blade Masters out there. It felt like we were seeing a lot of sort of double buffed Gangplank. It kind of stuck up on me because I didn't feel like Gangplank got that many changes over the course of time, but maybe things like Night bonus applying to everyone just helped him tank a little bit more. And we just ended up in situations where you very frequently saw things like 6 Noble Gangplank. It's like 6 Noble Gangplank Draven, things like that, right? And now you've got 2 Gunslinger Gangplank, 3 Blademaster Gangplank. He can have a lot of your damage items, and it ended up working out really well. So Gangplank down, again, about 25% of his spell damage. That's pretty meaningful. We're probably not going to look for Gangplank very much anymore. Now we stan Aatrox and Yasuo to go with our Draven. Gangplank can go, I don't know, somewhere else. Who cares? Don't care about him as much. Here is a further direct nerf to Nobles and to Guardians. Leona losing 1 second on 2-star Leona for stun duration. Definitely can matter. It exists. It's not completely, garbage, but you really never got 3-star Leona, so who cares? 2-star Leona's what's happened. So hey, there you go. Hooray, Leona. Really, really minor stuff, but it means that pretty much every noble's been chipped that now at this point. There have been a slew of nerfs to nobles over the last few patches, including 16B. Next up is another systems change I think is actually really cool. Healing is different now. So Grievous Wounds is only an 80% reduction, so you can still get little bits of health back. But because it doesn't cut everything, healing items like Bloodthirster, Gunblade, Redemption, and also Swain heal for less. So here is this data table. So Bloodthirster and Gunblade, right, 20%, 24%. Swain is 20, 22, 23% off his healing. Redemption's 20% lower. Noble, as we looked at earlier, is 29% lower. But Grievous Wounds used to bring your healing to 0, and now it brings it to a little bit. Mathematically, if you're in Grievous Wounds exactly half the time, this is basically a non-change. If you are in Grievous Wounds for half your lifetime, before and after, this is essentially a non-change. You have almost the same healing overall. I do like this design, though. I might personally say, hey, let's go for like 75. I don't know why 80 is very similar to 75, but like I like these debuffs being in the range of 80 to 60, somewhere around there. 80 is probably fine, to be honest. I don't know why it's at 75. The more I think about it, the more I don't care. But I like this saying like, hey, this is going to feel really good, and it's going to do the thing, and it's going to do the thing really obviously. And on the opposing side, you're just like, okay, ow, you got me, but at least I'm doing something. Like, maybe this Draven Axe heals me just enough. Maybe. I think that's a cool thing. I think that's good. I wouldn't want to go the World of Warcraft route where it's like a 10% healing debuff and it's just, hey, keep the debuffs on. Like, I don't think that's actually compelling. It might work in an MMO, but I don't think it works in a game like this where you don't have a 17 skill toolbar that you're using. I don't know, it's even more than that in WoW, but bear with me. Yeah, so essentially, now that you're under the effects of Grievous Wounds, you heal about 50% as much. You heal 50% of the old pre-patch number. So there you go. There's those numbers. Seems pretty decent. Cool stuff. Bunch of bug fixes. It used to over-nerf Infinity Edge. It used to turn off Ionic Spark. It used to turn off Zeke's. It used to turn off Locket. Shyvana jumps farther away. Rek'Sai knocks it more often. Weird Warwick bug. Warwick now scales up AP appropriately. Ahri no longer whiffs ultimates. Lucian now triggers Shiv and Hurricane on his first auto. That's a good thing. I don't know if you're really going to try to play like Hurricane Lucian ever, but this probably works for things like Gunslingers here as well, so that's a positive. Ludzen's working on units that die, also, which is interesting because you have a whole bunch of Lucian buffs. We have a bunch of Noble nerfs, so it's okay, but like, holy moly. Weird vibe bug. Little Legends can now get kicked back out to the right spot if they accidentally cheat into the barrier, so that's a good bug fix there as well. People rejoice. These are cool changes. I like this patch a lot. Minor updates, visual effects, muting people, okay, whatever. TLDR patch 9.17. Pantheon is in as a 5-cost Dragon Guardian. That's going to do a fair bit for the game. Pantheon seems to be very, very strong. I'm expecting him to very frequently be with Sorcerer, Aurelian Soul comps. Maybe not so much Shapeshifter, but playing Dragon Guardian Sorcerer seems like a great endgame composition. Maybe even 6 Sorc, because you really only need Pantheon and Leona, or Pantheon and Braum. And that's going to be a lot of frontline that maybe works out. I don't know. We'll see. Seems really good. The spell seems to do a lot of damage, right? It's if you can get him to 2 starts, 30% with 6 Sorc bonus, it's 60%. It deals 20% of the max health as true damage afterwards, which is really 40% of the max health is true damage with 6 Sorc bonus on. This seems like a great bomb to end games with. This seems really, really powerful. We're up to 56 characters now. Seems cool. First carousel no longer has 1-cost units. Ghost armies now get trait bonuses, so this is going to be essentially the game will end faster because one more player will take damage a lot of the time. Attack speed cap goes up as buff to Rageblade users. Assassin has the same overall DPS than before, but they are weaker against Phantom Dancer, and they are better Infinity Edge users than before. This is also a small indirect nerf to Rengar. We'll see how this goes. Hextech slightly weaker. Noble moderately weaker. Ranger slightly stronger. Shapeshifter slightly stronger. Yordle slightly stronger. I think this is probably enough to create some sea change. There is going to be a lot of attempts in the new patch to do a lot of things. There are a lot more comps getting a lot stronger. Going to be worth looking out for this. It's going to be very interesting because I think Nobles will still be viable. They will still be viable. And we'll see how it turns out, but it should be interesting. Graves now lowers his radius, his cone width when he gets RFC. Warwick is now on the very high end of 1-drop durability. Lissandra goes from bad to solid. She is not great. She is not a chase unit, but she is now solid. These damage numbers are actually pretty reasonable. This is actually fairly close to Ahri damage at this point. Plus it stuns, plus the radius is higher. Lissandra should be solid. She should be at least solid this patch. Lucian getting some minor updates. Gangplank getting some, it's about a 25% damage nerf. Leona gets 1 second off her rank 2 stun, which is pretty minor. Healing is down about 20 to 25% in all cases, and you get 20% of the healing when you are under grievous wounds. Which means if you are under grievous wounds about half the time, this is roughly a non-change power-wise, but it's going to feel a lot better, I think, all along the board. So these are cool things. Bunch of bug fixes, especially with Hextech turning off items that were not good, and really minor stuff overall. Minor stuff like Lucian gets his extra attack off, and it actually applies on attack effects. Luden's works even if the target died to the spell. Cool stuff there. Overall, seems like a great patch. I think there's going to be a lot of new comps as viable because I think you're definitely seeing a new big carry in Pantheon, and with a lot of shapeshifters getting better, that's going to see some stuff. It's going to see things shape up. You're going to see new comps. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to the patch. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.